Everybody needs to wake up because, as y'all know, we got a couple guests on today's show. So welcome back to another edition of Huskers Live. I can't talk already. Right out of the gates. It's not good. Huskers Live. I'm here with Brian, of course, again, recent addition to the channel. And then we're going to go ahead and introduce, I'll put Coach Bill Busch right in the middle, but
nice.
The man who needs no introduction himself, Bill Busch, has joined us. So thank you so much for joining us on the show today. How are you doing, man?
Doing great. I'm a big fan of entrepreneurship. So you guys are out working really hard and have a great passion, obviously for college sports and obviously for the Huskers. So anything I could ever do to help, I'm not sure I could do much, but like I said, I'm a big fan of people that are out there. That's how you find your way, and that's how you move up in this world, is just starting creative. And you guys are doing that at the highest level. Very cool.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, man. And appreciate you hopping on here and supporting as well. So
no problem. Glad to do it.
We'll launch right into the news really of the last couple of days or so. Nebraska and Tennessee canceled their series. I was curious on your opinions, Coach, on if you think that's a thing we see in the future where these big non-con games are no longer being played because of the way college football landscape has shifted in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah, I don't think it'll go away. There's a lot of really good non-conference games out there in the future. I think those will stay in there. There's different ways to view it, and from both sides of it. Now I look at things a little bit more from a fan's perspective, probably more than I did as a coach perspective, because you always want to get wins, you want to do things. But starting back as a coach, those are games you really want to coach in, and those type of games, those are fun. I remember just being at LSU and going to play Miami in Jerry's World and down in Dallas, or going to Texas the next year in those games. And then also your players, if you've recruited the right guys, they want to play in those big games. They want to play because they're not the same. You can't say that it's the same feeling playing a MAC team as it is playing a high-end playoff team. And so it's different. And then what I really look at it for is from the fans' perspective. Because right now there is a overload of we need help from the fans, and they're really asking financial help. Then we need fandom when you do. And so what excites the fans the most also is good quality games to be able to see and watch and be part of. So from a fan's perspective, for me, if I decide I'm just a fan and the game gets canceled, highly disappointed, just because of the fans that would go to Knoxville, the Tennessee fans coming to Nebraska, all of that is highly is not the word disturbing, but it just bothers me. It's depressing that those games don't exist and don't play. Also, I always know there's a reason why it happened. I understand that part of it. From a fan's perspective, I think it's always hard. But like I said, I don't get myself worked up with it. I don't think this is a egregious error by the athletic department or the AD. I think it's just something that came about. But the people who lose out are the fans. They're the one, and those players, because there's a couple players, they were going to be juniors and seniors that year, and they were going to play Tennessee at home. They're going to go to Knoxville, and that would have been crazy fun. I mean, because you don't remember the games. Not many people go back to last year and just say, I just remember that beating UTEP. It was incredible. I remember coming off the field after that game and what it was like in the locker room and all that stuff. That you live as a competitive person and a competitive coach to be in those games.
Yeah. I'm going to have a follow-up to that, if you don't mind, real quick, Justin.
Go ahead.
Did you ever play at Tennessee in a night game when you were coaching at LSU?
Never did. We never did. No, I've only been to Tennessee as a fan. I've never coached there before, but I've been inside the stadium to watch games there. But I've never been one to coach there. It's craziness. It's like I said, it's, when they go through all these things and they vote all the different places of, Death Valley on Saturday night, which is LSU, which is an insane place to play. Tennessee is ridiculous. A lot of places, Texas A&M, ridiculous. There's a lot of places that are incredible in that league to play. And it would have been something you'd remember forever because, it's on that stadium, Neyland Stadium is right on the river, and it's just a cool environment to be able to see. But to play in those games are forever lasting, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then talking a little bit about kind of your coaching stint, special teams coordinator specifically and stuff like that. Just kind of diving into that because that's kind of been a topic of conversation over this last year. But I would say just in your overarching perspective, what are the most important things when it comes to detailing that unit that you look for in a great special teams unit? What are the three biggest things that you look for in a consistent special teams unit, or yours in particular that you like yours to have?
Yeah, there's a lot of different variants. The one thing you always talk about, the only time you have culture on your team is when your best players are your hardest workers.
Yeah.
And so I'd always talk to players and I'd say, boy, remember when you came on your recruiting trip? And they're like, oh, I do, coach. And they'll go through the details when they arrived, what they did that night, who they met with. Oh, we went out and we met different players. We went to a couple social events. And then the next day we talked football. We talked about how we're going to get me prepared to be a great player at Nebraska or at LSU or Ohio State or any of these places. And then we talked about how I'm going to also be prepared for graduation and the NFL and an extreme detailed plan just for me during the recruiting process. And then you ask the player, well, do you remember when they talked to you about being the left guard on the punt team? And they're like, nope, that didn't come up in the recruiting deal. Well, it's one of the most important pieces there is of a football team. And so when you get people that are extremely excited about those venues of how to get them excited about being on the punt team, how elite that is to be on the punt team, what it's like to be on the kickoff team at an elite level, all those different things like that. When you get that excitement built, and that's just that's the culture of your building is that if you're not on those. And I got a chance to work for Tom Osborne was in the middle of every special team drill that there was, the meetings, everything about it was with like that. All the guys I worked for, Kyle Whittingham, intense with that. Ed Ogeron sat in the front row. Urban Meyer ran the remote. He ran the meeting.
Yeah.
And so the expectations were set very clear from all those elite coaches that I worked with, and that was a fun factor to get everybody to buy in. That was one of the things that I brought up with that Coach Joseph was able to do when there was a change at coaches when I was still here. Once Coach Joseph took over, even though I was running the defense also and with talking special teams, was the punt team eats first. So anytime you have a meal, it's like, and everyone, you're done with the conversation, team prayer, whatever, punt team eats first, because that's a invite only to be on the punt team.
Yeah.
So just different methods of that, and then being able to motivate the room, run the room, have high expectations, understand the why, and all those things. And once you get that established, then things take off really well for you. But you have to have it from the top down, obviously, to be able to have that. You got to have the head coach heavily involved in that, because you won't be able to do it all by yourself. If you don't have any interest from the head coach, it won't go great for you.
100%. Right,
Coach. One thing I noticed, I was looking kind of back at your time, both with Bill Callahan and with Coach Frost when you were the special teams coordinator, and I noticed a trend. In those two stints, your special teams units had over 20 block kicks and 20 block kicks and punts. Is there something that you look for on film that you identify to exploit? And how do you go about executing that plan on game day?
We did. They were extremely well at blocking punts and kicks. And it's real easy right first. You just make a commitment that we're going to block kicks, and that's what we're going to do. And we're going to get guys that can do it. And if you're uninterested in this, then you're just really not going to be a part of this team going forward. It's all about how you set the expectations. Next thing would be when you practice it. If you don't call it ever, after a while, you just lose them. It's like we've worked on a punt block now for 9 weeks, and we've never called it. And after a while, they just drift off. And so being able to have the structure and the head coach trusting you with what you had to get done, that is so important to have different aspects of that. And so, yes, so if you're starting off, I'll give you an example with punt. You're going to start off with my first thing I'm going to look at is I have a chart, and I'll track the long snapper, and I'll have a chart of it's a picture of a punter, and it's just his cutout, and then I chart all the snaps. So all of a sudden, if every snap, that snap chart has everyone on the screws, which means the ball's coming right at the kind of at his waist, really good timing on it right there. Boy, it'll be hard to block one, but you'll always have one ready. When they spray the ball, which means the punter has to reach for the ball. Now that slows down op time, and immediately you're in go mode. Let's get this figured out. Let's find a way to go try to block this. And then you try to figure, you don't need 9 guys to block a punt. You need 1 or 2. And so you set it up for those guys, or the ones that they're going to come free. This is how we're going to attack the scheme, and this is what we're going to do. But you want to shift and move different things. One thing that we'd always do, we'd always have a mouthpiece call. And generally, if you ever saw people, if they were given a cadence or talking, is a lot of times like that, whoever the one is in the shield or in the personal protector, they'll hold the mouthpiece in their hand. Or they'll have it like that, and they'll put it back in their mouth right when they're getting ready to, when the snap is going to happen. So we could show a look until the mouthpiece went in the mouth, then we'd move them. And so just little tips. You're just looking for any little clue to give away with where they're at and what's going. So you try to build on that. And then, we worked heavily on one-handed block punts because everybody talked about, 2 hands, taking it off the foot, all that stuff. Well, you go back and do the research, and 90% of the punts that are blocked with one hand. Yeah. So we blocked punts with one hand. And so we'd practice that and how we would do it, have drills set up for it, and how you wanted to be able to get that done. And then just make it a big deal. There were some big ones. And even that last year when I was at Nebraska, we blocked the one for a touchdown against Indiana. There was a big play. I had a big one against Purdue, which was a great buck. But we had a lot of blocked punts. And that's also how you become a good punt return team, because those yardage that goes on punt return. When you block a punt and you return it for a touchdown, that's a return for a touchdown.
So I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's the part that also makes you a good punt return team also. So when you look at everything in Compass, that's kind of how it works. And then the big thing was in field goal block was to get hands in the flight lane. So we would do a drill where you'd take a string and you would tie it to the goalpost, and then you would line the defense up and move the offensive team around, the score team around, and then you'd move the string to the ball, and then you'd be able to show where the flight lane is. The big thing is we don't block bad kicks. Yeah. So the guy's going to miss the kick. Why block it? That doesn't mean anything to you. And so hands in the flight lane was the big thing, and we were so good at that here, especially that time with Coach Callahan, was ridiculous. And there's times that you don't even remember. Some people will remember how games are won. You could talk about Texas A&M when Maurice Purify caught that pass and beat him down at A&M. Yep. Well, prior to that, a couple of things happened. Once A&M had the ball to win the game, and they ran out of bounds and gave us a chance with clock. And then they kicked it was a 6-point game. They kicked a field goal that would have put them up 9 and ended the game, and we block it. Yep. And that gave Zach Taylor a chance to come on the field, go down, hit Mo, and win the game. But the blocked field goal is what did it, and everyone knew we could block it. It wasn't like I don't know. Everyone knew he could block it. Adam Ickes blocks one against Pitt. Crazy game, 7-6 was the score. They're kicking like a 30-yard field goal to win it. Adam Ickes, does the exact technique he's taught to do to block it to win a game. So those things are really, really important. But once you get the feel for it and the team gets excited and you have the energy, that's when it gets going. So obviously I get excited about trying to block kicks.
Absolutely. So talking about just kind of what you were just referencing, like it counting as, a punt return, that'll kind of lead me into this first question that I had. I just was curious based off of that, like because Nebraska has had, inconsistency, especially over the last few years, or the most recent years, and not having an ability to return a punt. We had IGC, or it's like we're fair catching in a lot of cases. And what are the signs of a good punt returner? Like what are because it's different than any other position. It's very unique. And you got to have more than just a skill set of a wide receiver. Like you got to have the awareness. You got to know when to make the right decision. So what do you look for when it comes to a quote unquote like return man?
Well, there's a lot of things. First thing is the punt returner is my favorite player on the team, and I tell the team that. It's not like, he's my favorite. Well, why? Well, here's the reason he's my favorite. Because you say, who wants to return kickoffs? 20 hands go up, because when you catch the ball, the defense is 30 yards away from you. Yeah. When the punt returner catches the ball, they might be 1 yard away from you in a full stride length, and they can run right through your chest. So it takes a completely different person back there. Then also like that, they also have to do the extra things that nobody else does, which means in February, Like a day like today when the wind was blowing, I'd have guys come over it in the afternoon because you got to catch balls with the wind and into the wind. If you had some of those really rough days and it was super cold out, I would have them catching balls on those days when it's really cold, because that could happen to you in a December game, in a playoff game at Nebraska. If it's snowing or it's raining, they have to do all the extra things that makes them so special. So I have such a love for the punt returner. And then he's got to be an incredible decision maker. He has to be able to understand what I call Peter calls from the ball hitting the team and how to get people away from it. So it all happens in split seconds. So you have to be able to have all those skill sets, and you have to be able to be coachable, because you teach them all these things that are going to happen to them, and they have to be very, very coachable. But in general, the ability to track the ball is where it really all starts. Because if you can't track the ball, there's not many center fielders that were just, man, you know what? I couldn't track the ball for about 7-8 years, and all of a sudden I figured it out. Yeah. They just kind of a natural skill they have to track it, to see when the nose is turned over, what's going to happen. You teach them all the reasons, but they just know. And so those are the skill sets that you're looking for with it. The one thing you have to understand, punt return, though, is that I use it just they're talking about playing poker. You don't go all in on a bad hand. Mm-hmm. And so if they punt a ball 36 yards, 34 yards with decent hang time right there, there's not a punt return that's really available right there. You have people standing on top of you. So you take the fair catch. Don't push your chips in when it happens, able to go. When they're going to punt with the wind, I'm going to have space. I know when I can create space. I know when this is going to happen. I know when they turn the ball over, I'm going to have some room to operate a little bit. And my theory on punt return was always get him started. That was my number one goal. We're going to protect you. We're going to be a 10-yard cone. That was my deal. A 10-yard cone. If there's a great punt return, he has to make 2 guys miss and break 1 tackle. If you go back and just take this over history, you take big returns, and you're going to say, you know what? He made 2 guys miss, and he broke 1 tackle. You don't see a guy just catch the ball and just run just like 80 yards. Like, oh, no one's even around. Nope, doesn't happen. So, but if you get him started, then you got a chance. And you get really happy about a 10-yard return, and you celebrate that with your team, and you celebrate in the meeting room. It's a first down. Yeah. And the next thing is like how many yards are given up. If the ball hits the ground, it's going to roll an average of 18 yards. So you work really hard on, can I get to the ball, or if the ball one hops, can I field the ball to stop the roll? Just watch next year, and you'll see it hundreds of times where they don't field the ball and it rolls for 22 yards, and the ball goes down to the 6, and they could have had the 22 or something of that nature. So the decision making, when they just stop the ball from rolling, and off a one hop, that's brilliant. It's yards. So there's so many variables to it. I could probably go off on punt returners for a couple hours pretty easily.
What's your rule set in terms of when they field it versus when they don't inside the 5-yard line? Do you have any specific set of rules that you
I go the 8-yard line is what I'd like to be at. And there's a couple things you do different with it is that I always go staggered stance, because if you're a staggered stance person, which if you have a little more weight on your back foot, you don't rock back. Sometimes if you go heels at the 8 or heels at 10 in the old days, sometimes the ball's coming to you, and then right at the very end, it just drifts back a couple of yards, and you drift back, and all of a sudden you're standing there catching the ball at the 4. The staggered stance takes that away. The other one that I would do as I got more developed, if I was at a place longer, was we would just start at the 2-yard line, and then as soon as the ball left his foot, you start walking forward. That way your momentum was coming forward, and then you made your decision on whether I'm going to catch this or not. But that helped you make your decision with where you're at, so you didn't get the roll back. So you had 2 different methods of what you do, but it's not just heels at 8 and don't go backwards. Well, you'll see a lot of errors on that one also. Yeah. If you fair catch a ball at the 2, that's detrimental. I wouldn't freak out if a guy caught it at the 6. 8's my number. If he caught the ball at the 7 or 8, I'm not going to lose my mind, because the offense can still operate at that point. And then also, if they're kicking at that, if you're in that spot, they're kicking a dagger kick, which means that the ball's coming end over end backwards, and it's going to probably, the odds of it checking up are really good. Mm-hmm. It's not like the old time where it's like, hey, just let it hit. It's probably going to go in the end zone. It's probably way less it's going to go in the end zone because of how the ball is kicked on the Aussie style punt now. So that's where the world's different.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Brian, anything?
Yeah, Coach, I just wanted to kind of go back to when you're promoted the interim defensive coordinator after Coach Frost was let go. There's clearly a shift and a change that you made on that defense, because your points per game were at 35 or so. Then you took over, and by the end of the year, you guys were at 23 or so points per game. Your yards per game was less by like 200 plus yards per game when you took over. What is it that you did, either schematically or simplifying things, that led to that success? And like my follow-up would be, in that situation, when you know the coach was let go, how do you keep players bought in to still, go out and give that effort when they know there might be wholesale changes come Black Friday after the Iowa game?
Sure. First thing I told Coach Joseph was, hell no, I don't want to do it. I said, we just lost. I go, that hasn't been good. I said, my name's going to get attached to this, and it's going to end badly. And he was very good about it. He said, I understand. He said, you're the defensive coordinator. So, all right. So that's kind of how the conversation went down. But, I think what helped was that I'd been coaching. The guys all knew me from special teams. I think that helped a lot. I think, I don't know this for sure, probably having some credibility of, being on the national championship team at LSU and having the Thorpe Award winner and Grant Delpit, and just being a part of a lot of good things, that was a plus. And then having some history here at Nebraska also, and being a defensive coordinator before also, being up in front of the players, being in front of the room of how we're going to do it, I think helped out. The players were ridiculous, and the staff that stayed, everyone stayed with me. They were ridiculous as far as how hard they worked. I said, this is how we're going to do it. Luckily, we had a bye week, before we played Indiana. But, I took a few things that were things that definitely that I wanted to do that was same as. And so I kept that. So I learned that. Then I changed everything else, because I was like, I can't fix something that I don't know what's broke. I can't call someone else's defense. So we went. And a lot of guys had to change. We went to the odd front. We went to a zero nose and four techniques. And so a lot of that stuff, those guys who were playing outside, stand-up guys like, Garrett Nelson and those guys, they had to play four eyes against tackles and do some of that. And they did it at a high level. And so that was incredible to see just how well those guys responded. But I say that the walkthroughs we would have were the same walkthroughs we had at LSU getting ready to play in the national championship games. They were that good. They were that locked in. So our walkthrough period before Iowa in the hotel was one of the best I've ever seen. And so those kids, I remember you saying that, they were just so good. And we had uniqueness, and this what we're changing. Against Iowa is like they're a big empty team, and we're coming after them. And we got fumbles off. I had some plays come off of it, so we had some ideas of what we wanted to do and tell them the why of how we're going to do it. And I think our meetings were super crisp. I know that our walkthroughs were really good. And the numbers, that's the kids. It's ridiculous, the numbers. If that was all Big Ten games, and it was 200-some yards a game better. And so that was really cool. I think like a lot of points, went off for that also. So just credit those kids, because they could have cashed it. It could have been horrible. We're playing Iowa. If they win, they're going to the Big Ten championship game. At that point in time, there was Mickey. We knew that we were not going to get retained, and so that had been so easy. Just like, let's just get this thing over with. Yeah. And the kids responded really well. So we changed everything and made a lot of different calls, and the kids all bought in, and it kept things really crisp, and practice was really sharp, and Coach Joseph did an unbelievable job of keeping that team together.
Yeah. And last thing, and I think I remember you saying this, but like, I think for you, when you took over, it was getting back to the basics. You were talking about just simply gap integrity, like the little small things. When you fill your gap, fill it correctly, make a good tackle, like that type of thing. Was it that simple when you came on, just trying to like make sure that like you simplified it enough, and that actually was able to help them improve that?
We did a lot of simplifying. We did a lot of getting people down in positions to having us in the position. A lot of times in football, you can be creative with your safeties on. They're going to drop him down. He's going to be an A gap player. He's going to be a C gap player. You can do different things. Yeah. And that wasn't working good on the move. And so I just pre-aligned everybody. So we're going to play this like day one stuff. We're going to pre-align. We're going to get our feet in the turf. We're going to get our cleats ready to go, get ready to play. And so we did a lot of that. The first time, I remember talking to to the TV commentator for the Indiana game, and he came in and sat down with me. He goes, I don't have any idea how you guys can win this game. And I said, we're going to win it by getting lined up. Yep. And we spent because Indiana was the fastest team per play. They went at just nitro speed. And we had all these clips we showed of people making errors and looking to the sideline when the ball was getting snapped. And so we set up this whole different scheme with these 2 trash cans on each side just to form offensive lines about 30 yards apart. And then we would go back and forth, and the team had to line up on a formation and turn around and line up on the formation and turn around and line up on the formation. And we just kept talking about getting lined up. Yep. And then we talked about when we would change calls. It's like if they make a play and the play's going, we're running the same call again.
Yeah,
we're doing the exact same thing. If they throw an incomplete pass, instantly look over, we're changing the call.
Yeah,
if they're going to do this, we're changing the call. So we went 100% in that game of being lined up, and so we never made any errors because the team, they were never looking over at me to see like, hey, what are we running? It's like, no, they're in go mode, so we're going to run the exact same thing again until something allowed us, to be able to flip it and be able to make a different call. And that simplicity made them feel at ease and let them play.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting. It seems like that's kind of what helped this offense this year too. Just kind of almost, simplifying everything, making a little bit, so execution improved. Execution improved. Naturally,
Ferguson did a great job. That was fun to watch.
100%. Absolutely did. All right. So Noah here just chiming in, says, great to have you, Coach Busch. You're outstanding. Appreciate all your insights. As do we. And Brian, again, thank you, Coach Bill, for being so gracious with your time again. Brian, do you have anything else for Coach before we wrap up with him?
No, I'm good. I just want to say thank you again, Coach. I really, really appreciate you jumping on with us.
Oh, it's fun to talk to you guys. Like I said, I have such passion for guys that are, like I said, I got into this profession by volunteering and starting it, and just figuring out a way to make my way into different things. So when people are out there hustling, it's so much fun to see how hard they work and what they're doing. Those things are just so cool to have all that stuff happen. So I'm proud of you guys for what you're doing like that. I look forward to I'll keep following you guys and appreciate very much like that, and appreciate guys that chime in, and hopefully you guys have a great rest of the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And yeah, we really greatly appreciate that. And yeah, we'll be in touch. So
awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Yep. Later, Coach.
Bye, Coach.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. And so big thank you to Coach Bill Busch for coming on here.